Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Nuggets and Wolves tussled in Game 2 of their Western Conference playoff series. Also, the Mets' meltdown is here, and oh, baby, is it real. And A.J. Brown is being traded to the Pats, apparently, just not yet. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
In a surprising turn of events, the Timberwolves took Game 2 over the Nuggets to even the series as it heads back to Minnesota. Locked On Wolves host Ben Beacon reacted to the surprising T-Wolves dub.
First, we got to talk about Rudy Gobert and Chris Finch. Chris Finch did a masterful job coaching in this game. And look, I don't want to, I want to talk about this game. I don't want to litigate the entire season with Chris Finch. And I know the pregame comments, which again, they were made pregame before Monday night's game about the officiating in Game 1. They were not made postgame on Saturday. They were made pregame on Monday. So I haven't addressed them on the show. Finch called out the officiating, suggested maybe the Timberwolves should start flopping, et cetera, et cetera. That's a topic for another day. I don't want to get into that today. That's one of those, the sentiment I agree with, and we saw it on display in this game. The timing could have been questioned. Some of the Wolves' strategy to start the game could have been questioned in terms of how they were trying to defend Nikola Jokic and how the Timberwolves, well, really, I don't actually think that the game plan was necessarily all wrong. I think it was the execution. And that, of course, has some level of reflection on the coaching, right? If your team doesn't execute over and over and over again, it's either at some point it becomes they're just not getting the message, right? That appeared to be the case early in this game. But we have to credit Chris Finch for a couple of things. Number one, he maintained his composure. And look, every coach snaps. We've seen Chris Finch snap before. He did it in the OKC game memorably back in, I think it was December. There was one play where there was a foul call. I don't remember which one it was. And he was literally biting his lip on the sideline when the NBC Peacock crew cut to Chris Finch standing there. And he was doing everything he could to not lose it because it was one of the plays where there was physicality on one end and then on the other, and it was not consistently applied, right? He held his composure. The Timberwolves had no composure to start this game as a team. Whatever happened in that second quarter, in those huddles, on that bench, I thought Chris Finch had a steady hand there, and he stuck to the plan when it came to his rotations. He pulled the right levers. He pushed the right buttons when he needed to. The Rudy Gobert foul trouble thing, which was dicey how he got there. The Wolves went small and it worked extremely well to the point that I think it was Brian Scalabrine, one of the commentators in the third quarter, made a comment like, as soon as Gobert picked up his fourth foul and, Naz Reid hopped up off the bench, he's like, I was wondering, Chris Finch was ready to put, as if like he didn't want Gobert in the game. That's absolutely not true. Rudy Gobert was phenomenal in this game. We're going to talk about that. But the ability for Minnesota to play big with Gobert guarding Jokic and then also play small with a combination of Julius Randle, Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels on Nikola Jokic worked extremely well. Now, Naz was the one guy I thought that really struggled guarding Jokic one-on-one. I don't think anybody wanted that to be the case. Scalabrine didn't understand this either, but Randle had 3 fouls in, I think it was the third quarter when this was happening, and he kept saying, I would have Randle on him. And Michael Grady kept trying to remind him, like, sometimes not so subtly, that, hey, Randall's got 3 fouls. Naz has 1. Naz struggled with that matchup, but everyone else did great. And the way that the Timberwolves, they were even okay with switching McDaniels onto Jokic. We saw McDaniels guard Jokic late in the Christmas game, a few months ago, and that worked out okay. But obviously then you're locking up, like if Gobert's off the floor and McDaniels guarding Jokic, you have no rim protection. You have no really long switchable defenders anywhere else. And so it limits your resources, right? Elsewhere on the floor. But Minnesota being willing to switch those actions was really interesting. Putting McDaniels obviously on Murray, Randle on Jokic, and there was a possession where Randle locked up Murray late in the game too. Jamal Murray looked like he ran out of juice, and we'll talk later about how he finished the game with that insane contested long range 2 down 3 with no timeouts. I don't know what Jamal Murray was doing. But Randle locked up Murray on a possession. McDaniels had a couple of good possessions against Jokic, competitive possessions where he made things difficult on him. Randle was great when he guarded Jokic. I thought when there wasn't a switch and he was on Jokic in the post, he was physical like he was in game 1. Rudy Gobert late in this game was absolutely phenomenal. There was one play he forced a pass. There was another he forced a short jump hook. There was another that he forced a jump hook that just missed, and there was a little help from McDaniels. There were like 3 out of 5 possessions or something where Gobert essentially just stopped Jokic. There was another one he deflected a pass that Joker tried to dump off, and there were several rebounds he tipped away from Nikola Jokic. Very impressive from Rudy Gobert, and it's well documented. He does not guard Jokic well one-on-one. Basically, nobody does besides Karl Anthony Towns. That's over here. But Gobert did it. And, you heard on podcasts, national shows and everything over the last week, like, Jokic has figured out Gobert. Jokic has figured out Gobert. That's fair. Jokic, I've said this on the show, is a generational, the best offensive player of this generation, a historically great offensive player. In this game, he had not figured out Rudy Gobert. And I don't know if Joker was tired. He didn't sit in the second half. Valanciunas was so bad in his stint in the first half that he didn't even see the floor in the second half. I don't think he played 3 minutes in the game. So obviously Joker was tired. Rudy Gobert with the foul trouble. I mean, Gobert only had to play 28 minutes in this game because of the foul trouble. And when he was out there late, he was awesome. Don't look at the box score and go, Rudy had 2 and 7 and no blocks in 28 minutes. He was bad. Rudy was great in this game. Rudy was great. And we have to give him his flowers for the defense he played on. Oh, and we got to talk about right after a couple of those great defensive plays on the offensive end, Gobert goes to roll to the basket and Jokic steps in front of him and does the thing where you step in front of a guy that's rolling and you just fall over. Of course, Jokic is surely much heavier even than Rudy Gobert. And he felt like, somebody had just like ran him over with the dump truck. He draws the offensive foul late, but draws the offensive foul. It's absurd. Goes back the other way. Next time down the floor, Gobert dunks on Jokic. His only bucket of the game, dunks on Jokic. And it was a little bit of karma there. I thought that was really nice.
Stay up to date all year on the Minnesota Timberwolves by subscribing to Locked On Wolves on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. You're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, the Mets are falling apart already. Before we get to that, the Raptors are struggling with the Cavs. The NBA playoffs are here and every possession matters. Every matchup is magnified and every game can swing a series. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on all the action. You bet just $5 and you get $250 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action, whether it's player stats, trends, matchups. It's all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters, whether you're looking at stars, role players, or key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Cavs are up 2-0 on the Raptors after another impressive playoff performance.
Danny Cunningham here at Rocket Arena after the Cavs beat the Toronto Raptors in Game 2, 115-105 to take a 2-0 series lead. Let's talk about this one for 94 feet. Donovan Mitchell was spectacular once again. James Harden was very good once again. Evan Mobley was very good once again. And I'm starting to get the feeling that the Cavs are just better than the Toronto Raptors. Those 3 guys combined for 83 points, and the Raptors tried a bunch of different things defensively. They've tried trapping. They've tried cycling different defenders onto Mitchell and to Harden on the perimeter. And just, they don't have the horses to be able to handle what the Cavs can throw at teams offensively. I just think that a lot of teams don't have answers for Donovan Mitchell, and the Toronto Raptors certainly qualify in that group. Now, I thought Toronto played really hard. I thought they did a lot of interesting things that we'll see how that translates when this series heads up north on Thursday. But as of right now, I just think that the Cavs are a better basketball team than the Raptors, and I'm not sure that this is going to be a series that's going to go any farther than 5 games. These two teams have played 96 minutes so far. Cavs have led for almost 86 of them, and I think that tells the story.
Elsewhere in the NBA, the Hawks battled with the Knicks.
Hello, friends. My name is Brad Rowland, the host of the Locked On Hawks podcast. The Atlanta Hawks come back from a 14-point deficit, including a 12-point deficit. Very late in the game, the Hawks had a huge 15-3 run in crunch time. CJ McCollum became a villain in New York almost instantly during this game, and after game 1 with his comments about Jalen Brunson, got into it with Jose Alvarado. In this one, there were scuffles, there were skirmishes, but in the end, the Hawks escaped with a surprising win, given the way this game transpired. The Hawks were losing almost the entire way. They did not lead in the entire second half until the very end of the contest, and then even at the end, McCollum misses a pair of free throws in the final seconds and almost gave away what would have been a brutal loss in the end. But the Hawks just got there. Atlanta shot 1 of 12 from three in the second half and still managed to overcome a deficit, even on a night when it wasn't the best from Jalen Johnson or Alexander Walker. But McCollum was awesome. Defensively, the Hawks got enough stops late, holding the Knicks to 15 points in the fourth quarter, and a memorable game and a memorable win for the Hawks, who, by the way, now steal home court advantage in a series that suddenly feels pretty winnable for Atlanta. Game 3 on the horizon coming up on Thursday, but plenty to talk about on this game and more on Locked on Hawks.
We can't forget about the playoff hockey. On the ice, the Canes squared off with the Senators.
Hockey is a cruel game sometimes, and the Ottawa Senators thought they were dead, thought they were alive again, and ultimately they fall to the Carolina Hurricanes 3-2 in double overtime. I'm Brandon Pillar from the Locked On Senators podcast. And this was an absolutely wild game. I mean, it goes to overtime. The Canes think they score. It's offside on a delayed penalty. Turns out the delayed penalty is a penalty shot. They take the penalty shot. Allmark makes the save. It goes to the second overtime. And Martinook, the guy that didn't score the penalty shot goal, gets the game winner. Just crazy. Linus Allmark played amazing. Jake Sanderson with over 40 minutes. The Ottawa Senators must have had 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 amazing scoring chances. A bunch of them hit off the post, and they can't get it done. And as a result, they're going back to the nation's capital down 2-0 in the series. We'll cover this game more in the postcast and, of course, on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
And the Penguins hosted the Flyers.
The Philadelphia Flyers take a 2-0 lead in their series with a 3-0 shutout of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Hi, I'm Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. The Flyers took game 1 and the Pens were ready with some adjustments for game 2. They certainly did their best to keep the Flyers at bay, and shots were fewer and far between for both teams in the first half of the game. The physicality stepped it up a notch as well, but without question, the star of the game for the Flyers was netminder Dan Vladar. He came up huge in the third period, especially saving all 27 shots he faced. The Flyers broke it open in the second on a nifty shot from who else but Porter Martone. The PK for the Flyers was very busy, and the Flyers were shorthanded 5 times in the game, but Owen Tippett showed his best moves, getting by Chris Letang to dish one to Garnet Hathaway for the shorthanded goal. Now we head back home to Philly, ready for Flyers fans to make their voices heard at Game 3 on Wednesday night.
If you ask a Mets fan how the Mets season is going, they'll probably tell you that the Knicks are in the playoffs. It's been 11 straight losses for the New York Mets, spawning conspiracy theories and memes galore. Ryan Finkelstein from Locked On Mets joins me now. And Ryan, what is going on right now? Why can't this team win a baseball game?
I don't know if the first bit of analysis I should give you is this team is cursed, but since June 13th last year, the Mets have had 4 separate 7+ game losing streaks. And that is just not common. And it's completely different rosters, all with very highly regarded, well-paid players, and they can't find a way to win a baseball game right now.
So, okay, that seems like you're wondering about institutional control then? Does that lead you to the manager?
So I don't believe that Carlos Mendoza is the reason the Mets are losing games, but I also think with everything I just said and the fact that the Mets have played at pretty much 100-loss pace for the past 4 or 5 months of baseball that he has managed, it's fair to fire him. I don't think the Mets will, but it certainly is fair to fire him.
So if it's fair to do and they're not going to do it, why would you not do it?
Well, one thing about this losing streak is Juan Soto has not been present for it, and he's about to come back. And you're also about to play a bunch of series against teams that really aren't expected to contend this year. So the Mets have a runway right now with a 9-game homestand and Soto set to return off the IL where they could get a little bit closer to 500, and you can see what this roster can do. I don't think that they're going to react as bad as it's been to 11 straight losses and fire their manager at the end of April, even early May. If things continue, is Carlos Mendoza on the hot seat? Yes. But for now, I think the front office's stance is we'll get Soto back and we'll see what this team looks like.
Well, and I think the manager part of this is almost separate from the things that are causing them to not win these games. Like the manager can only control so much. He can only control, lineups and some bullpen decisions, and then there's the situational. Do you bunt here? Do you steal a base here? Those sorts of little things. What is it on the field that is holding the Mets back right now?
This lineup can't hit, and that's where Juan Soto is the big help that could solve a lot of problems. You have Francisco Lindor off to a slow start. We've seen that throughout his career. Bo Bichette dealing with the pressure of a new contract. He has really struggled. And some young guys that the Mets were counting on, like Brett Beatty and Carson Bench, have really not delivered offensively. Not only does Soto help because he's one of the best hitters in the game, but he takes pressure off everyone. And so I really do think that, personally, I'm looking at this on the glass half full side as the runway has been set for Juan Soto's MVP campaign, because if he can drag this team from the backdrop of this and into contention, he's going to get a lot of credit for what happens coming up here.
Oh, Ryan, now you're thinking like a content guy. I love it. David Stearns, when he came in from Milwaukee, I mean, it was almost like, okay, you take the kind of Moneyball analytics approach. They were able to build that farm team in Milwaukee. They were able to lose players and then just always backfill. You thought, okay, take that guy and now take the deep pockets of Steve Cohen, and this should be like easy, right? And that has not happened. Why not?
It's crazy because I don't hate the process. I didn't hate their process of the trade deadline. And honestly, a lot of people in the industry were giving the Mets a ton of praise right after the deadline for what they got for what they traded, and just that they'd done a really nice job trading from strengths in their farm system to fill out that roster. It just blew up in their face. So the results have just been really bad. I haven't disliked how they've gone about building this roster. It just hasn't worked. All we can say right now is it's early, but if this continues all season, like, David Stearns is definitely going to be taking a brunt of the blame for what's happened. The way this roster has, collapsed last year at the beginning, collapsed at the end of last year, and now before they even got going this year.
What would it take? I mean, you mentioned you don't think the Mets are going to fire their manager, like Carlos Mendoza, at least for right now, is safe. What would it take to get there?
So there's this stretch of games that I talked about coming up here. I would say over the next 3 weeks, if the Mets are not showing signs of progression, there's going to be nothing left to do but fire the manager. But I think he's probably safe for another 3 to 4 weeks. And if the team continues to perform this poorly with Juan Soto in the lineup, then I think that they're going to have to make that move. But at that point, the season might be lost.
Stay up to date all year on the New York Mets by subscribing to Locked On Mets on your favorite podcast app. Coming up, apparently AJ Brown is a Patriot, but just like not officially. The New England Patriots are likely getting AJ Brown in a trade after June 1st. Locked On NFL host Tyler Rowland reacts to the pre-move from Philly and what it means for Drake May and the New England offense.
It's just so crazy to see a trade like this that feels like it's basically done, and to have all the big national voices come out and basically talk about this being done. I saw another report from Ari Marovs basically saying that the terms have almost been agreed to, where it's going to be a first-round pick probably in 2028 for the Philadelphia Eagles from the New England Patriots. So just crazy to see something like this transpire. And of course, they're waiting until June 1st for financial reasons, which makes sense for both teams.
Yeah, the weirdly public nature of the negotiating is weird, because why wouldn't some other team maybe try and swoop in and say, hey, wait a minute, if this is what the Patriots or the Eagles are talking about here, I could come in and try and one up that, or maybe the Patriots are just willing to be the highest bidding team. It's just kind of a strange arrangement here where it's like, could something change between now and June 1st? And all of a sudden on draft day, a receiver is there that the Patriots weren't expecting to be there with one of their picks, or vice versa. Someone wasn't there for the Eagles that they thought was going to be there. Just feels weird to me that this is this sort of limbo trade that we all expect is going to happen, and we assume nothing's going to change between now and then. It's just weird.
Yeah, it is very weird, but it's going to be a massive trade for both teams no matter what. Honestly, I look at it, I can't believe that the Eagles are actually doing this. It seems like for a team that's in a win-now title contending window, to give away a player as good as A.J. Brown just doesn't make a lot of sense, but he could be exiting his prime. There have always been concerns about A.J. Brown's knee and his health holding up, and then there's, the drama and the personality part of it. But I got to tell you, I think this is an absolute coup by the New England Patriots to get A.J. Brown, put him back with Mike Vrabel, give Drake May a legit number one wide receiver. I think this is exactly what the Patriots should be doing to take that next step, try to get back to the Super Bowl and potentially win it.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you think about, I mean, it'll depend on what the draft capital is, but if it's a first round pick next year or whatever it is, like you AJ Brown is what you would want to get with that draft pick anyway, right? Like your chances of getting an AJ Brown caliber player with that pick. And if it ends up being a first and a second or stuff, then we start to get into some trouble of, okay, what's the real worth there? But like for a perennial 1,000-yard receiver who's still only 28, I guess he turns 29 this summer, but you still have a good, 3 to 5 years in front of him of high quality play. Like this is the Patriots time, talk about the Eagles being in a win now window. The Patriots are trying to maximize while Drake May is still young and cheap to try and put them over the hump. So if the Eagles are willing to get rid of one of the, 10 best wide receivers in football, why wouldn't you call him up on that?
And finally, Victor Wembanyama called his shot. 2 years ago, he basically told Rudy Gobert to enjoy his reign over the NBA Defensive Player of the Year award, and now Wemby is the youngest winner ever. And the first unanimous one at that. All 100 first-place votes, zero debate. The scary part is that's probably just the beginning, not his peak. When you're 7'4", blocking everything in sight and predicting your own awards, the league might just be on his timeline from here on out. Coming up, do the Rockets have any sort of response after being embarrassed by the Lakers in Game 1? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.